The sun was setting over the small town of Redemption Creek when Sarah Mitchell walked into the Silver Spur Saloon, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. She wasn't the type of woman who frequented saloons. Her modest dress and the Bible she clutched told everyone that much. But desperation had a way of changing a person's habits. She was looking for Jack Thornton, the widowed rancher everyone in town talked about, the man with more children than he could count and a heart bigger than the Montana sky. Sarah was 28 years old, which in 1887 made her practically a spinster. She'd been married once, briefly, to a man who had divorced her within a year when the doctor confirmed what she'd suspected. She could never bear children. In a time when a woman's worth was measured by her ability to give her husband sons, Sarah had been cast aside like a broken tool, left to bear the shame and whisper behind hands that followed her everywhere. She'd come to Redemption Creek 6 months ago, taking a position as the schoolteacher, hoping that distance from her past might offer a fresh start. But small towns had long memories and active gossip mills. Within weeks, everyone knew her story, and the eligible men who might have courted her had quietly backed away. After all, what use was a wife who couldn't give you children? But Jack Thornton was different. Or so she'd heard. His wife had died 3 years ago, giving birth to their 7th child, leaving him with a house full of children ranging from 14 years down to a newborn. He'd tried managing on his own, hiring housekeepers who never lasted more than a few months, overwhelmed by the chaos of so many children. The town ladies had offered to help, but their help always came with expectations Jack wasn't ready to meet. Sarah found him at a corner table, looking tired but somehow still solid, like an oak tree that had weathered many storms. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 35, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that held both sorrow and kindness. 3 of his children were with him. 2 boys who looked about 8 and 10, and a little girl of perhaps 5 who was falling asleep against his shoulder. "Mr. Thornton." Sarah approached the table, her voice steadier than she felt. Jack looked up, his expression cautious but not unwelcoming. "That's me. You're the new schoolteacher, aren't you?" "Miss Mitchell." "Yes, sir. I wonder if he might speak with you for a moment." "In private, if possible." Jack glanced at his children, then at the clock on the wall. "Boys, take your sister out to the wagon." "I'll be along shortly." The older boy scooped up the sleeping girl with practiced ease, and Sarah felt a pang watching them go. They were so comfortable with each other, these children who'd had to grow up too fast. When they were alone, Sarah sat down without waiting for an invitation. If she didn't say what she'd come to say quickly, she'd lose her nerve entirely. "Mr. Thornton, I'm going to be direct because I believe we're both too old for games. I've heard you're looking for a wife. Someone to help with your children and manage your household." Jack's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't interrupt. "I want to propose an arrangement. I'm a good cook, a hard worker, and I'm excellent with children. My students can attest to that. I can manage a household, I'm educated, and I have no family making demands on my time or loyalty. I would be, I think, a good wife and mother to your children." "Those are fine qualities," Jack said slowly. "But you've left something out, haven't you? The thing everyone in town has been whispering about." Sarah's face flushed, but she met his eyes steadily. "I can't have children, Mr. Thornton. A doctor confirmed it years ago. My first husband divorced me because of it. I understand if that makes me unsuitable." "Hold on now," Jack interrupted, and to Sarah's amazement, he was smiling. Not a mocking smile, but something warm and almost relieved. "Miss Mitchell, I've got 7 children. 7. The oldest, Danny, is 14 and thinks he's already a man. Then there's Matthew at 12, the twins James and Joseph at 10, little Beth who's 8, Samuel who's 5, and baby Grace who just turned 3. I've got enough kids for both of us, maybe enough for 3 or 4 people." Sarah stared at him, not quite believing what she was hearing. "You mean, it doesn't matter to you? That I can't give you more children?" Jack laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Miss Mitchell, Sarah, if I may, the last thing I need in this world is more children. What I need is someone who can love the ones I've got, who won't run away when Samuel gets into the honey for the 3rd time in a week, or when the twins decide to see if they can teach the chickens to swim, or when Grace has a nightmare and needs holding in the middle of the night. I need a partner, not a broodmare." The crude term made Sarah wince, but she understood his point. So you're saying? I'm saying let's get to know each other. Come out to the ranch tomorrow. Meet all the children when they're not half asleep. See the place, see what you'd be taking on. If after that you still think you want to tie yourself to this chaos, then we'll talk about marriage. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. You don't know what this means. Jack, he said gently. If we're going to be married, you should call me Jack. And I think I do know what it means. People can be cruel about things that aren't anyone's fault. My Emma, my late wife, she went through 7 pregnancies, and each one was harder than the last. The doctor told us after Beth that she shouldn't have any more, but Emma wanted a big family. When she got pregnant with Grace, I was terrified. And I was right to be. His voice grew thick with emotion. So no, Sarah, I don't want more children. I want the ones I have to grow up with a mother who chooses to love them, not someone who sees them as obligations to be endured while she works on giving me sons of my own blood. The next day, Sarah drove her small buggy out to the Thornton ranch, her stomach fluttering with nervousness. The ranch was larger than she'd expected, with a sprawling house that had clearly been added onto multiple times, a large barn, and various outbuildings. As she pulled up, children seemed to pour from every direction like water from a spring. Danny, the 14-year-old, was the first to approach, his manner protective and assessing. You're the schoolteacher, he said, not quite making it a question. I am. And you must be Danny. Your father has told me about you. Told you we're a handful, I bet, said one of the twins. She couldn't tell which, with a grin. He told me you're creative problem solvers, Sarah replied diplomatically, and several of the children laughed. Jack emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. I see you've met the welcoming committee. Children, this is Miss Mitchell. She's come to visit and see if she'd like to help take care of you all. We don't need taking care of, Danny said stiffly. We do fine on our own. You do remarkably well, Sarah agreed, but everyone needs help sometimes. Even strong young men like yourself. Something in Danny's expression softened slightly at being called a young man rather than a boy. The day that followed was revealing in ways Sarah hadn't expected. The house was clean but cluttered, with the kind of organized chaos that comes from too many people in too little space. The children had clearly learned to fend for themselves in many ways. The older ones helped the younger ones dress, everyone had assigned chores, and they moved around each other with the practiced ease of a well-rehearsed dance. But Sarah also saw the gaps. Little Grace's hair hadn't been properly brushed and hung in tangles. Samuel's shirt was on backwards. The meals were functional but uninspired. And there was a sadness in the house, a sense of something missing that went beyond just a mother's touch. She spent the afternoon with the children, reading to the younger ones, helping Beth with some arithmetic she was struggling with, and listening to the twins excitedly explain their latest invention. A contraption meant to automatically collect eggs from the henhouse, though they admitted it needed some work after it had accidentally launched an egg into Matthew's face that morning. As the sun began to set, Jack found her on the porch where she'd retreated for a moment of quiet. What do you think? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Still interested, or are you running for the hills? Sarah smiled. They're wonderful children, Jack. Energetic, creative, and clearly devoted to each other. But they need more than what you can give them alone, no matter how hard you try. I know, Jack said quietly. I'm doing my best, but there are only so many hours in the day. The ranch work has to get done, and the children need attention, and I'm always choosing between the two. Danny's trying to be the man of the house at 14, and that's not fair to him. Beth cries for her mama at night, and I don't know what to say to make it better. And Grace, his voice broke slightly. Grace doesn't even remember Emma. She calls the picture on the mantel, the pretty lady, but she doesn't know that's her mother. Sarah reached over and took his hand, a bold gesture but one that felt right. I can't replace their mother, Jack. I won't even try. But I can love them as they are, and I can be here for them. I can brush Grace's hair and help Beth with her tears and tell Danny it's okay to still be a boy sometimes. If you'll let me. Jack turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. Why do you want this, Sarah? Really? Most women would see this as a burden, not an opportunity. Sarah was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When I found out I couldn't have children, I thought my life was over. I thought the only value I had as a woman was gone. I grieved for children I would never carry, never birth, never nurse. But then I came here and I started teaching, and I realized something. Being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about the daily work of loving and caring and showing up, day after day. Your children need that. And I need to give it. We need each other, Jack. Your family and I. Then marry me, Jack said simply. Not next month or next year, but now. This week. Those children in there need you, and if I'm being honest, so do I. I'm not offering you romance or a grand love story. I'm offering you chaos and hard work and 7 children who will test every ounce of patience you have. But I'm also offering you a place to belong, a family to call your own, and a partnership with someone who will respect and value you. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the church, with all 7 children present. Danny stood as Jack's best man, looking solemn and proud in his Sunday suit. Beth and Grace were flower girls, though Grace mostly just threw all her petals in one big handful and then clapped at her own accomplishment. The twins managed to behave themselves for the entire ceremony, which everyone agreed was a minor miracle. The real work began after the wedding. Sarah moved into the ranch house, into the room that had been Jack's alone, and began the process of becoming mother to 7 children overnight. It wasn't easy. Danny resented her at first, seeing her as an interloper trying to replace his mother. The twins tested her patience with elaborate pranks. Beth had nightmares and would only be comforted by Jack. Samuel had tantrums when things didn't go his way. And little Grace, sweet as she was, had the uncanny ability to find and destroy anything breakable in the house. But Sarah persisted. She braided hair and mended clothes and cooked meals that made the children's eyes light up. She established routines and rules, but she also brought laughter and music back into the house. She sang while she worked, taught the children games her own mother had taught her, and read to them every evening before bed. Slowly, things changed. Danny came to her one day with a problem about a girl he liked, and Sarah gave him advice without judgment. The twins started asking her opinion on their inventions, genuinely wanting her input. Beth began having fewer nightmares, and when she did, she'd crawl into bed between Sarah and Jack, finding comfort in being sandwiched between them. Samuel started calling her Mama Sarah, which made her cry the first time she heard it. And Grace, who had no memory of another mother, simply called her Mama and would have fierce tantrums if separated from her. Jack watched all of this with quiet gratitude. Sarah had brought order to chaos, but more than that, she'd brought warmth back into their home. She and Jack developed their own partnership, built not on passionate romance but on mutual respect, shared purpose, and a growing affection that surprised them both. One night, about 6 months after their wedding, Jack found Sarah on the porch again, wrapped in a shawl against the autumn chill. He sat beside her and took her hand. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah thought about her former life, about the shame and rejection she'd endured, about the children she'd thought she'd never have. Then she thought about the chaos inside the house. Danny helping Matthew with homework, the twins probably plotting something, Beth and Samuel playing checkers, and Grace demanding her bedtime story. She thought about the daily work of motherhood she'd been given, about the love that had grown in her heart for these 7 children who weren't hers by birth but were absolutely hers by choice. "Not a single one," she said, leaning her head on Jack's shoulder. "Not one." "Good," Jack said, pulling her closer. "Because I think they'd mutiny if you tried to leave now. Grace threatened to run away when you went to visit your friend in town last week." Sarah laughed. "She told me she was coming with me and that she'd packed a bag. It contained 3 dolls, 1 sock, and an apple." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the children inside. It wasn't the life Sarah had imagined for herself all those years ago. It was better. Because she'd learned that family wasn't just about blood or biology. It was about showing up, day after day, choosing to love people even when they were difficult, even when they tested your patience, even when they threw handfuls of flower petals at inappropriate times. She couldn't have children of her own, That was true. But as Jack had said with that smile that had changed everything, he had enough kids for both of them. And these children, these 7 wonderful, chaotic, demanding, loving children, they were hers now in every way that mattered. Inside, Grace's voice called out, "Mama, we're ready for story time." Sarah squeezed Jack's hand and stood. "That's my cue." "Our cue," Jack corrected, standing with her. "I want to hear how the princess escapes the dragon tonight." Together they walked back into the house, into the noise and chaos and love that filled every corner. Sarah had thought her inability to have children was a tragedy that defined her. But she'd been wrong. It wasn't a tragedy at all. It was simply the path that led her here, to this family, to these children, to this life that was so much fuller than anything she'd dared to dream. And that, she thought as Grace climbed into her lap and the other children gathered around, was more than enough. It was everything.